one day. It took me like weeks to do this.
Okay.
Do the other one. So, all right. So I'll just do a brief overview.
I'm here with Brian Castro, who's showing his brand new machine. Okay, let's talk about the evolution of it.
Hi there. We're going to start off with the theory kind of behind this guy here. So basically, we started off with a 303. So this is a 303 circuit board. Some of you might notice it. Kind of cheap, but cooler nonetheless. So the first prototype of this guy, the Avalon synthesizer, is one-to-one of the TB303 mainboard. Includes the original power supply and everything about it. The original transistors, all the original ICs, same manufacturer and everything. Same capacitors, same United Chemicon SR series capacitors. Everything is exactly the same as the original TB303. A couple of these parts are kind of hard to get, but I've had them for a while. I've got a few thousands of them. In particular, the one that's hard to get it to sound right is the differential amplifier in the filter. It's a 2SE2291. It's a common base dual transistor. There's an SMD version that you can get if you feel like hand sorting it yourself these days, but it's not really worth it to me. So the evolution. Next we go to, this is a production version of the mainboard that's in here. Still based on the 303. What we do is we put connectors across it so that we can then join what will be this top layer of control and new circuitry. So basically what you have here, if you were to remove these, they're in the exact locations of the TB303 controls. So if you were to take out this CPU in RAM, put in the original 303 CPU, throw in the original RAM, it would work as a 303. Okay? So what we did next was instead of using the pots, you take them out, you put a connector in, and then you just bring them up to the top. And now you've got this thing sandwiched together like a glove. Now you've got your...
So is it very rugged?
You see the inside of it. There's about 12 standoffs with some pressed screws. This thing weighs about 12 pounds.
So you're bidding goodbye to wiring.
That's it. This is the real deal, quality-wise.
Yeah.
So it's like a baseline with quality anyway. So now you've got the original 8 controls, relatively close to the original spacing, and the new circuitry. So you've got the original 303 circuitry here. It's the same switch LED matrix from the 303. Our microprocessor uses about the same power as the original 303. So everything about it is the same.
Yep.
Because the power supply is really strained on the 303. So I didn't want to like put any additional load on it or any less load on it because it might affect the way the thing chirps and stuff.
A lot of discussion about that.
It just I've got tons of data, but it'll bore you to death. But a lot of things happen when the power supply starts to sag below its level where it maintains regulation.
That's what I've always liked about your designs. You're an engineer first.
Yeah, that's
who thinks like a musician.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Okay, so there you go. So now there is new controls here: cutoff, resonance, envelope mod, envelope decay, accent, volume, tempo, and these guys are all original, of course. So you've got a sub oscillator. It has 3 waveforms: saw, triangle, square, and 2 octaves. So the octave is on this hardwired switch on the back. Now you've got the interface. And then the waveform is here. And then the main oscillator, you can turn it off, or it's the original saw square. Okay, and then we'll just move across the analog path before we go into any I/O and stuff. So the filter tracking is it's non-linear, so it works more at low frequencies. It works way better, way more groovy for a bass line than to try. I tried linear tracking, and it just adds too much high frequency, and it doesn't really do anything for you. Down low, you don't get enough movement down low.
Yeah.
You don't get this like sample and hold, like bobbing all over the place. So envelope mod, envelope decay, accent decay, the usual that a lot of mods will have. It's independent of envelope decay. Sometimes people implement it. It's not always a bad thing to have a limitation. Some people implement it where it's dependent on envelope decay, where it can never be longer. But here it's independent. Accent, normal. Now the VCA can be turned off all the way. You don't even have to use it. So normal 303, 3-second decay time, or all the way off. You might want to turn it off, or you might want to turn it down so it's real stuttery because you get all these complex modulations when you have the accent going to the VCA. You've got the VCA envelope going to the VCA, and then you got the utility envelope going to the VCA. So the utility envelope has a tap.
You really have a voltage mixer.
Basically, but you do, and what ends up happening at the end of the day is you get these like syncopated groovy things going. Almost sounds like sometimes you have a delay pedal hooked up to it. The way you get, it's like complex envelopes. Basically, is what you got because you're like multiplying like 2 or 3 different envelopes. Okay, so the utility envelope, that's new. Obviously, attack decay. Attack time is less than 1 millisecond. Just like you don't even hear it basically. And then it goes to the filter and the VCA. It doesn't go to the VCO. It's just too much because it takes you too far away from the core kind of like baseline thing. Where you want limitations. You don't want like necessarily farts and whistle sounds all the time. And when a guy's playing live or something, there's a cat missing there. When a guy's playing live or something, he's not going to want to be able to go to left field like that easily from the feedback that we got anyway. So bipolar modulation to the VCF, and we'll look this up in a little bit. Bipolar modulation to VCA. So when you actually do negative modulation to the VCA, it actually adds an offset since the VCA is single supply. It runs from like 0 to 12 volts.
Yeah.
So what it does is it progressively rises the off level so that it can do this, a reverse envelope. So what that means actually is if you just turn it down, it just synth drones. So that's how you get into like drone mode, which is awesome. Okay, so one of the really cool things with the analog staff is this filter card slot. Let me see if I can find one.
I love having like a...
So we got main, out, CV, gate
later.
Yeah.
So you got CV gate in and out. Sweep out is the actual CV from the sweep circuit. It's not a gate. It's not the accent gate. It's the actual sweep that's slew that's generated on accents. It's multiplied so it adheres to 0 to 5 volts, and then it's offset to 0. So it goes from 0 to 5 volts. Whereas in the 303, it does something. It changes the bias level changes, but it goes from like 3 to 4 volts or something. Filter CV input, and then these are audio. This is audio I/O. So you've got the saw and square out plus minus 5 volts.
Yep.
External in, which comes here, and when you use the external in, it overrides the sub oscillator because there's actually a preamp before it. So you can bring in pretty low signal levels, and there's a preamp. You could also take the saw or the square or the VCA out, plug it back in there, and then overdrive it like everyone wants to do.
So I've got a kicker pedal, so you could have that triggering and
Yeah, that's cool.
put subs.
Okay, so you've got frequency response. Now when this is out, it's the normal TP303 frequency response, where it's got these 2 coupling caps to the VCA are relatively small, so the frequency response is like 90 hertz and up. Put this guy in, it goes down to like 30 hertz.
Ooh.
You don't always want that, but you bring it down to 30 hertz, you use the triangle, -2, and then the roof's falling in. Filter B is this entire filter card slot. There's 4 filters designed already. There's a Roland 24 dB, a Moog 24 dB ladder filter. There's an Oberheim style 12 dB state variable filter, and there's a Wasp filter. That's the most recent one that we designed. I have the Moog and the SCM version here, over here, but I still need to screw the card together and throw it in there to try it out.
Yeah.
But they work. So with the filter, you're allowed through software to switch modes to 2 modes. So you have a filter card in there if you have a low pass, high pass, or you've got a second order, fourth order, you want to choose between them. There's a control line that allows you to select between 2 different filter types, or if I wanted to design a filter that had two different filters totally on it, I could technically do that too.
So on the fly, how do you change filters?
You don't have to do anything. It's just hot swap. You just unplug it, plug it in. So on the card slot itself, and I'll show you one in a little bit, and hopefully
you're just hitting that filter B button to go back and forth between your filters.
That's it. So the card is actually the Game Boy cartridge system. All the international patents expired last year, and I was designing a synth cartridge system. And when I realized that, I was like, "What am I doing?" So we tooled up. Basically, which is like a Game Boy cartridge, but it's not theirs. But yeah, it's like a Game Boy cartridge. It's got a little extra space for through-hole components if we choose to do some with through-hole components, and it clicks right in there. And of course, that connector. There's millions of these Game Boy things made over 20 years. That connector is ubiquitous. And, you can get it for 50 cents, so it's not it's cost-effective to implement it into the product. So when you switch between the 303 internal filter and that filter plug-in, everything is mechanical. the audio signal path is not passing through any FETs, any analog switches, none of that. It's hardwired through this multi-pulse switch. The control voltages that need to be switched between the two filters, since all the controls are common between the two, those are using mechanical relays. You can actually hear a couple relays when you do this. I didn't want any. If the 303 is like that, you know, the summing into the VCA is passive. There's no summing amp there. You don't want that. It changes the character of it when it's being driven and stuff. So there you got that. What else can I tell you? Want to move on to the sequencer?
Distortion. You've always done some interesting things with distortion and overdrives and things.
I didn't include a distortion in it.
Okay.
Only because of the cost that I was going for and the fact that I could just put one external. I may design like the ultimate synth external distortion. I have some designs that I have aside for some point.
I've got a TT303 and I put two DoD grunge and metal pedals after it.
Of
and
course.
It just,
yeah, of course. The other reason I didn't do it is because I have all the I/O, so I can go back and distort the filter. Usually, I distort like on the Zoxio. I would distort the output. It's basically the main out. But the reason on some of the other stuff that I do that I put a distortion there is because the off-the-shelf overdrive pedals and stuff aren't really for synths necessarily.
Exactly.
I made it so it was like perfect for the like baseline type synth. So it was included. Whereas on here though, you could send it to a pedal at any point and bring it back, or you can just overdrive the input of a filter.
Oh, so you got patch pay for that.
I decided to just leave it out.
So in a DJ setup, you got a place for a lock here.
Yeah, there's a lock. It just barely fits in the corner over there. It'll do DIN-sync MIDI in and out. If you're syncing to MIDI in, it'll spit out DIN-sync and MIDI. If you're syncing to DIN-sync in, it'll spit out DIN-sync and MIDI. If you're using the internal clock, it'll spit out DIN-sync and MIDI. It has USB MIDI, so you could play it over MIDI if you wanted to. But it'll do everything it does via MIDI, via USB MIDI. There's also something that a lot of companies don't do. I think it's because of the cost. There's actually a USB isolator in there. We had to have it. It's an audio product. When you stick that USB cable in there, a little ground loop problem going on, it can kind of get into the audio path. So you use this rather expensive USB isolator, and it gets rid of that problem. But I think it was only right. So.
Okay, to the sequencer.
To the sequencer. Okay, so if you were to look at this and scrutinize it, it's different than the 303. the 303 would have four pattern groups and 7 tracks, whereas here what you're seeing is 7 pattern groups and 4 tracks.
Okay.
There's a reason for that. So you've got 7 pattern groups. So there's 7. Let's call those 7 main groups. This can get a little confusing. And then within those 7, for each one, say I'm on group 1. Within that.
And this is that custom pot you had made.
Yeah. They're actually
feels
all
good.
Custom. They're actually all custom. These are custom too. I have for my company. I have a custom spec for the like the lube they use inside, because I don't like when they're all loose and one's loose and the other one's looser. I hate that. So if you turn them, these are tight. Not only are they tight, they're knurled down to the panel. So these aren't like cheap encoders that are going like this. That's kind of the whole point of the whole thing. It's like high quality. You can take it to your studio and have a good looking thing that you want, that makes you want to play it, or you play live and it's just badass. It would never break. You could like throw it on the ground, spill stuff on it. That's bothering me. The cap is missing on it. But okay, so
it's a prototype. Actually, it's past that.
Yeah.
Pre-production.
Let's. Oh. Bet you I know it. Probably scrambled it. The actual FRAM that's used in the product is not on this microcontroller, so I only use the first 2 pattern groups.
Yep. No, I talked to you last week, and you were just talking sheet metal and production, and it looks pretty nice.
Yeah, the company's kind of screwed them up, and they're still not perfect, but they'll get there. I think I am gotta go into config mode, turn it to internal sync.